the uncertainties of life, but don't retreat in activity. Ecclesiastes 11 verse 4. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the cloud will not reap. Watch out for the paralysis of analysis. Obviously, that's not my saying. I got that from Jim Berg. You call it being responsible, but it's based on a fear that paralyzes. You can always say, I need to analyze this, and it can paralyze you from ever getting anything done. Do you know what a lion tamer uses to tame a lion? I mean, they can use a lot of different things, but one of the main things that every lion tamer walks into a lion's cage with is a stool. Now again, just speaking for me personally, if I'm thinking about what I want to go into a lion's den with, I don't think of a stool. But from what I read, a lion tamer will walk in and they'll take a 3 or 4 footed stool and they'll poke at the lion with the legs of the stool. And from what I'm told, a lion, when he sees 4 legs coming at him, will be paralyzed trying to figure out which leg he should focus on and won't attack. Now again, personally, walking in with a shotgun would be more my way of wanting to approach this situation. But from what I am told, it's actually wiser to come in with more than one pokey thing, because that more than one pokey thing makes that lion go, ooh, what do I focus on? But us as human beings can do that. One of the most deadly things on Amazon for me is the reviews. Do you know how long you can review something before you want to buy it? I mean, because some of you are this kind of person. You look at it and go, oh, it's got 5-star reviews, I'm good, and you buy it. Some of us are like, yeah, but what'd they say? And we start scrolling. And like, this one's only had 3 million reviews. And I think I have to read all of them. Do you know I'll never buy it if I have to read all 3 million reviews? And again, it's not that you shouldn't. A wise person will glance at a few reviews. I recommend it because sometimes the people that reviewed it are the owners. At least so it appears after reading them. Like, yeah, they didn't use this. Or they give it 5-star reviews. It showed up in a box. You're like, well, thanks. That wasn't my question. So life's uncertainties cannot be met with attacks. This is intensity. You're trying to get more control. Often our responses are based on fear. If I don't get ahead of this, it will get me. Again, there's nothing wrong with trying to be prepared and get ahead of something. But be careful, because it's very easy for those of us that like to prepare to try to control our life so that we don't have to trust in God. We can trust in our own ingenuity and cleverness. And again, I'll pick on Glenn, realizing your life is not mine. There are times, like last week, where I had a little bit more time. And so what I did is I studied a little bit extra. Because I knew this week was coming, in which I was going to get hammered. And so I prepared ahead. I made sure I had different things lined up so that this week, when I got hammered, I was still going to be ready, or at least relatively ready, for the fact that I was still preaching. Is there anything wrong with that? Not in concept. Here's the danger. If Glenn thinks that being prepared means, God, I got this. If I ever get that mentally, I'm in big trouble. Now, by God's grace, I know that already. But as a human being, it's a constant battle of thinking, if I have gotten all my insurances and my this and my that and all my ducks in a row, I've got this under control. And so I attack with intensity because I don't know what life's going to bring, and now I feel secure because I've done it. And Solomon is saying that's a bad way to respond to the uncertainties of life because you still don't got it. The other option that people try to do is, rather than attack, is they avoid. They avoid with passivity. They procrastinate. Again, the word my mother used for that is called lazy. But generally we don't, if you're this kind of person, and again, sometimes I have been, I don't say I'm lazy. I say things more like this. Well, I think you're supposed to do, when you do something, you got to do it right for the glory of God. And I don't have time to do it right, so I just won't do it. What did I mean? I mean, I can't control how it's going to turn out, so I'm not even going to try. Now again, there may be some things that are wise again in that aspect to realize I can't do this. But often, the human being who is like this is a perfectionist who is fleeing from difficulties, and in fleeing from difficulties and not wanting to find out they can't control life, they just do nothing. Because you know what? I've tried this. I've tried doing nothing and seeing if it fixes itself, and it rarely does. Occasionally, like if you own a computer, the smartest thing to do is to shut it off and turn it back on. And sometimes it fixes itself. But most of the time, whatever's causing the little glitch comes back in the next couple of weeks. At least it does on my computer. The danger. Don't retreat in activity, whether you attack or whether you avoid. Okay, face your limitations while leaving the results to God. Ecclesiastes 11 verse 5 says this, "As you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who is with child, so you do not know the works of God who makes everything." The life of faith does not remove the problem of our ignorance. Rather, it enables us to live with it. Faith flourishes in the mysteries of providence. It does not abolish it. I don't know what God is doing often in my own personal life and in our world. But believing God does not mean that I do no activity. It means the activity that I do trusting Him. Because we come across many things in life that are just difficult and strange. Again, let me use a personal example. I was interning in Kansas, and one of the things that the pastor asked me to do in the internship was, he said, "Glenn, when you have nothing else that I've given you to do, go visit people in the church." Now again, the church I was attending there in Kansas was a little over 400 people. To put it nicely, I didn't know everybody. And so what he wanted me to do is walk up to people's door, and they didn't know me, knock on their door and say, "By the way, I'm the intern at your church," and just, thought I'd stop by for a visit. I don't enjoy that type of thing. It's not my favorite thing to do, but under orders, I did it. And one of the gentlemen that I stopped by at random, because the pastor wouldn't tell me who to go visit, he just said, go through the directory and pick somebody. Again, not my idea of a good time. So I walk up to this gentleman's door, I knock on the door, and he's an old farmer, which I didn't know that before I got there, but I figured it out once I drove up to a farm. And we talked, again, very enjoyable. Encouraged me in the Lord, I encouraged him in the Lord, and I went home thinking, well, Pastor Wayne will be happy. I did what he wanted me to do. The next morning, I come into the church, and I'm going through, looking at my folder of what I had to do that day, and the secretary said, "Glenn, I see on your sheet you turned in that yesterday you went to visit Mr. So-and-so." I said, "I did." He said, "Well, last night he had a heart attack. He's in the hospital." I said, "Oh." So I went, I sat down, I needed to do some reading, so I finished my reading, and I went, well, I saw him yesterday, I guess I'll go do a hospital visit. So I hopped in my car, and he picked a hospital that was a little bit of ways away. Anyway, I get there, I walk in there, and the man smiled at me and said, "Good to see you again. Didn't think you'd see me this fast, did you?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Why did God do it?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, Why am I here? Why a heart attack?" What do you tell somebody? As you're looking at a life of faith, it doesn't remove the problems, and doesn't remove my ignorance. I have no idea. And he has no idea. This is what I had to tell him. I said, "Sir, I have no idea. But I know God knows what He's doing, and we can trust Him." Now, he got out of the hospital and lived another year. My point to you is this. Face your limitations while leaving the results with God. Therefore, work hard. Ecclesiastes 11 verse 6 says this, "In the morning sow your seed, and in the evening do not withhold your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both alike will be good." This is a little bit longer quotation. "Faith in Christ does not relieve anyone of hard work. It only makes it possible to get on with the job in a joyful spirit that expects God's blessings, whatever the immediate outcome may be. Our confidence is not, please note, in some mystical assurance of success in all we do. It is rather a confidence in the Lord himself and an assurance by faith that whatever happens, there will be a blessing in it for us, and I would add glory to him. The story is told of a man who was in an area where there was a flood, and because the waters were rising, he ended up on top of his roof. And early on in the flood, as it was getting up, past the first level of his house, a man came by in a motorboat and said, "Hey, you look like you're kind of in a bad spot. Why don't you hop in?" And the man on the roof said, "No, God's going to take care of me. I don't need to get in your boat." And the water kept rising, and the water started to cover the roof, and so he ended up on the peak of the house as the water was getting considerably higher. And somebody came by in a helicopter and yelled down, "Grab the rope, we'll pull you up." And the man yelled back, "No, I'm good. God's going to take care of me." The story goes that the man died. He drowned. And again, the story goes, obviously this is a made-up story in this aspect, he asked God, "God, I thought you were going to take care of me. What happened?" He said, "Well, you said no to the two people I sent to help you." And often God makes a way for us to be helped that involves us putting in effort. It's not us sitting up on top of the roof knowing God's going to take care of it. We don't have to get off the roof into a boat. It's not that we say, "Well, God always takes care of my needs. I don't need to work." It's the reality that if you work not, you eat not. And many people in my life have been greatly helped by a doctor who was used by God to help them through a physical difficulty. Can God do a miracle without a doctor? Absolutely, and he has. Does God always do miracles without doctors? The answer is, I hope you already know, no. Sometimes I have to go to the doctor and actually let him cut. Let him give me that medicine, or again, whatever the case may be. Trusting God does not mean inactivity, but trusting God does mean dependence. It's a mindset. One area this will be seen, and definitely for me, is in prayer. What do you take to God in prayer? You know what I tend to take to God in prayer? Things that concern me. Things that I need help with. And so when I find myself not needing to pray, I realize something. I think I've got it. And then generally the Lord brings something into my life that reminds me maybe I'm not quite as bright as I thought. How often are you taking things to God? Does it show dependence or independence? What are you taking to God? Is it showing dependence or independence? What are you trusting God with? We live in a life of stress, and we looked at that over the last couple of weeks. We live in a life that's filled with different stresses, and often, even those of us that pray are really good at praying and then taking the stresses back to us. Like, "Lord, I sure need help with this," and then I take it back in my pocket, and I think, well, now I've got to deal with this. And again, I'm not telling you there aren't times I don't have to still work. I'm telling you it's always times I have to depend on him, to trust him, that he knows, and he's going to take care of it. And if he shows me something I need to do, I'll hop to. So again, we're working through Discourse 4. We've covered the unsolved mysteries, the goads, the perseverance wisely, not foolishly, in this world of mystery, persevere boldly, not fearfully, in this world of mysteries, and then lastly, persevere joyfully, not passively, in this world of mysteries. The first challenge as we think about persevere joyfully is enjoy the gifts of youth. Ecclesiastes 11:7 says this, "Truly the light is sweet, and it is pleasant for the eyes to behold the sun." The twofold description implies that life is not only good in itself, but it is to be savored with enthusiasm, as one might enjoy honey. Life, rightly understood and prayerfully lived, is a joy in itself. And again, particularly in your early years, there's a lot of fun in life. And hopefully as you age, you don't lose the joy of living.